Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a set of uh, deeply unsettling investigative reports. It's a notorious true crime case.
Yeah.
The calculated execution of a young man named Bassam. Our mission here is to really trace the history of this deception, to understand how a seemingly perfect 8-year facade could be built to conceal, well, decades of serious criminal enterprise, and how that fragile truth ultimately cost a life.
It's a case that reads like a thriller, But the tragedy is entirely real. We have a clear paper trail, we have forensic evidence, and just stunning admissions that detail not a crime of passion, but a planned, multi-generational operation, all of it aimed at pure self-preservation.
So let's start in the final moments. It's the day before the Eid holiday. The air is warm, thick with the promise of celebration. A young man, Bassam, is driving, probably a little too fast, toward the upscale rehab neighborhood in Cairo. And beside him on the seat, a gleaming gold gift, a final, expensive gesture of love intended to seal a reconciliation with his girlfriend of 8 years, Habiba.
And this is such a crucial detail for you to grasp right away. Bassam, he thinks this is a happy ending, a chance to make amends after a fight. But for Habiba and her parents, this gold gift, it isn't a gesture of repair. This whole scenario, the reconciliation, the new apartment, the promise of marriage after Eid, it's the final calculated destination for an 8-year performance. This meeting was the trap.
Bassam is completely unsuspecting. He's heading to a property he believes is his future home. Habiba had called him earlier, and her excuse. Her successful businessman father, Dr. Ashraf Ahmed, needed Bassam's opinion on the decor for the new apartment they were supposedly moving into.
It's brilliant psychological leverage, really. It appeals directly to Bassam's desire to finally be seen as accepted, as part of the family, and, respected by this seemingly distinguished Dr. Hamed. It's the perfect domestic pretense to draw him into a private setting, far from his own family.
Right, so Bassam arrives at this apartment building in Rehab. And for those who don't know the area, both Rehab and the Fifth Settlement where Bassam lived, they're known as Cairo's wealthiest new residential areas. So he came from a high social standing himself. He's met by Habiba and the father's Syrian driver. The moment Bassam steps inside that apartment, the entire illusion, the 8 years of dating, the promises, it all just shatters instantly.
The shift is jarring. I mean, there is no tour, there's no small talk about paint colors. Sources indicate 4 large men employees, bodyguards, whatever they were. They immediately overpower Bassam. He is seized, tied tightly with a rope, his mouth sealed with tape to stop any sound from escaping, and he's thrown onto a bed. The love story, the wedding plans, all of it gone in under a minute.
Wow, an instant switch from fiancé to captive.
Yeah.
But to understand the gravity of that moment, we have to go back. Back to the foundation of the relationship. They met in school, both attended the prestigious British University, and they dated for nearly a decade. Bassam was financially secure. His father had even bought him an apartment ready for marriage. So why the delay?
The delay was because of the demands of Habiba's family. They presented themselves as the absolute epitome of high society respectability. The father, Dr. Ashraf Ahmed, a pharmacist turned successful businessman. The mother, Nagla, also supposedly a businesswoman. They insisted on these traditional principles, and they delayed the marriage until Bassam finished university and had a place to live. And Bassam, because of his devotion, he just accepted this whole prolonged vetting period.
I can understand the devotion, but 8 years? That's a long time to keep pushing the goalposts. Friends even suggested Bassam deserved better. They noticed a pretty significant difference in their social standing and their actual day-to-day lives, not just the facade. But what about Bassam himself? Did he sense the cracks early on?
Oh, he did. And this is where the psychology gets fascinating. Bassam felt a deep unease. He told people the parents' mannerisms, their speech, it all seemed utterly inconsistent with their supposed education and massive wealth. He sensed a weak educational level and constant acting. He saw the performance, but Habiba was the anchor.
She was the master performer.
Exactly. She played the role of the devoted high society daughter so effectively that Bassam always actively filtered out the inconsistencies he saw in the parents. It's a textbook case of cognitive dissonance, the emotional cost of accepting the truth that 8 years of his life and the woman he loved were fake. It was just too high. So he kept waiting, believing he needed to earn Dr. Hamed's respect. He was fulfilling a dynamic based entirely on a lie.
So his desire to prove himself was literally weaponized against him. Let's move to the point where that general unease turns into concrete, undeniable evidence. What was the first real crack?
It was a seemingly small detail, the name. People kept calling the father Sharif Hamed, not Ashraf. Habiba would just, dismiss it as a nickname. But you combine that with the father's highly evasive nature, that's where the alarm bell should have gone off.
Right. Bassam noted the father was highly intelligent in one specific way. He would masterfully change the subject whenever Bassam tried to understand his contracting business. It was impossible to get a clear answer, which suggests there was no real answer to give.
That evasiveness was their primary defense for years. But then during one of his visits to the family home, Bassam had this chance encounter with the truth. A piece of paper he wasn't supposed to see. A death certificate. In the name of Ashraf Ahmed, dated 2011.
And Bassam saw it, but he left without reacting. He finished the visit normally. That is maybe the most chilling moment of the whole story. Imagine the cognitive load.
Yeah.
Sitting there, having tea, making conversation, knowing the man across from you is a ghost, and your entire future is built on a forgery.
That moment turns Bassam from a hopeful fiancé into an investigator. The question shifts from, is this family odd, to, who is this man actually impersonating and why? All his previous suspicions, the lack of education, the strange mannerisms, the evasion, they now just coalesce around this one terrifying fact.
And when Bassam started digging into the names Ashraf Ahmed or Sharif Ahmed, what came back?
It was horrifyingly consistent. Every single description, every trace of those names that wasn't tied to the businessman facade pointed straight to a life of serious crime. Fraudster, thief, drug dealer. The sources explicitly state that every description was marked by criminal characteristics.
So Bassam, armed with this terrifying truth, does the sensible thing. He tells his brother, and his brother advises him, correctly, to just stop everything and confront Habiba immediately. You can't marry into this. So he does. He confronts her with the death certificate information.
And Habiba's reaction is the final piece of the trap. She doesn't confess. She launches into complete denial, feigned shock, emotional manipulation, accusing Bassam of betraying her trust and doubting her. And Bassam, still so deeply in love, he just chooses the path of least resistance. He pretends to believe her, drops the issue, and tries to patch things up with that gold gift.
But the damage was done. Habiba knew the game was up. She went straight home and told her father, Ashraf, that Bassam knew. Or at least he was close enough to knowing the full truth that their 8-year cover was crumbling. This is the pivot point.
This is where we get the full picture. The family's shocking reality. Dr. Ashraf Ahmed was not a retired pharmacist. He was a major forger and a drug dealer. And most critically, he was a fugitive. He wasn't just hiding. He had 40 years of prior judgments hanging over him.
40 years. That's not just a number. That is an effective life sentence. What were the specific crimes?
The judgments included 25 years for an eyewear case back in 2008, which was reported as a sophisticated, high-volume international smuggling operation. The other 15 years were for a forgery case in 2016. He had forged 5 ID cards, used fake bank accounts, and maintained that death certificate Bassam found. The whole contracting business was just a thin front for drug trafficking and organized crime.
And the mother, Nagla, the supposed businesswoman.
She was equally entrenched. Nagla was also a fugitive, with 11 years of judgments hanging over her, mostly for fraud and forgery. The entire respectable foundation of the family. It was constructed on decades of serious, high-stakes criminality, and they had been successfully evading capture for years.
So when Ashraf met Bassam, after Habiba told him, the dynamic had completely changed. Bassam wasn't treating him as the distinguished Dr. Hamed anymore. He was speaking to him in a radically different, challenging tone.
And Ashraf, a career criminal who had successfully evaded justice for decades, he correctly concluded that Bassam was an imminent threat. A threat who possessed information that could send both him and Nagla to prison for the rest of their lives. For him, Bassam wasn't a heartbroken fiancé. He was an existential threat.
Wait, I have to ask. If they had 40 and 11 years of judgments hanging over them, why didn't the family just flee the country? The moment Bassam started asking questions, wouldn't that be easier than executing a planned murder?
That's a critical point. They were deeply established. Fleeing means abandoning their entire criminal network, the drug trafficking front, the contacts, the money laundering infrastructure they'd built over decades. Eliminating the single specific threat Bassam was, in their cold criminal calculation, the most rational and efficient way to maintain their enterprise.
And that leads directly to the decision to execute Bassam. A decision made by Ashraf with the full explicit knowledge and planning participation of both Habiba and Nagla. This was a family business decision.
And the preparation began weeks in advance. During early Ramadan, Ashraf rented that new apartment in rehab specifically as the murder scene. Then he ordered his assistants to dig a massive hole in the kitchen, prepare a wooden box, construction materials, sand, ceramics, the whole setup.
They prepared the grave, a concealed, ready-to-seal burial site, weeks before the victim was even lured there. That moves this crime far beyond any spontaneous act.
It's maximum premeditation. The intent wasn't just to kill, but to permanently erase Bassam's existence, to make sure no body would ever be found so their fugitive life could continue.
That final week before the murder, it must have been psychological torture for both of them. Habiba was continuously fighting with Bassam, trying to make him feel guilty, while Bassam was constantly trying to prove his devotion.
And there's this fascinating element here. Bassam, knowing the father's secrets, sometimes went as far as insulting Ashraf Hamad to his face. He knew the father was paralyzed by the risk of being reported. Bassam was wielding the truth like a shield, not realizing the killer had already planned the final blow.
Which brings us back to the day before Eid. In that apartment, Bassam is tied up, taped. Ashraf enters. He sits with Bassam and threatens him, saying his silence over the years wasn't weakness, it was exhaustion. And now he was going to finish him off.
There was a brief discussion, reportedly only 2 minutes long, before Ashraf proceeded to strangle Bassam. Once the murder was complete, the cleanup was methodical, clinical, executed under a timeline designed for maximum concealment.
The body was dragged to the kitchen pit, placed inside the pre-built wooden box. And this is a chilling detail about their strategy. They added layers of sand, then charcoal, specifically to suppress any scent that might alert new neighbors or future tenants.
A second layer of sand went over the charcoal, and then workers who had no idea what happened were called in immediately to relay the ceramics over the fresh grave. The kitchen floor looked brand new, seamless. The grave was gone within hours.
And here is maybe the most disturbing indicator of Habiba's cold complicity. Immediately after helping dispose of the body, she left the apartment, went and met her friends, and acted as if nothing had happened.
The cover-up begins almost instantly. Just 2 hours after the murder, Habiba calls Bassam's brother. She's feigning concern that Bassam's phone is off, claiming he never even showed up to meet her. The family is setting their alibi.
But Bassam's family knew something was terribly wrong. After 10 continuous hours of a shut-off phone, they went to the police. But they were met with a standard 48-hour missing person wait time. They didn't wait. They used the information Bassam had discovered.
And that's the critical mechanism that broke the case open. Instead of filing a simple missing person report, they bypassed the delay. They filed a direct complaint with the prosecutor's office, linking Bassam's disappearance explicitly to the forged death certificate and their suspicions about Ashraf Hamad.
So the police bring in Ashraf, who's still using the alias Sharif Hamad. He denies everything, of course, but the team quickly confirms his ID is forged, and he is, in fact, the wanted Ashraf Hamad, the fugitive. The focus immediately intensifies on him and the family.
They question Habiba first. She maintains her story. She never saw him that day, so she's released. But the entire investigation hinged on one small variable: the father's Syrian driver. When questioned, he confesses instantly. He says he picked up both Habiba and Bassam and dropped them at that new rehab apartment.
And Habiba's rock-solid alibi just collapses completely. Authorities try to call her. Her phone is off. They discover Habiba and Nagla have fled Cairo and are hiding in the Red Sea Governorate. They're arrested and transferred back.
Under immense pressure, Ashraf confesses. He reenacts the murder, reveals the kitchen grave. But he tries one final desperate manipulation. He claims Bassam had sexually assaulted Habiba, and the murder was revenge, a crime of honor.
That defense failed quickly. Habiba was confronted with the phone trading data. Bassam's signal stopping in rehab, hers moving toward the Red Sea, and the driver's testimony. She finally admitted to luring Bassam, but kept insisting her father only wanted to discipline him because of the alleged assault.
But the truth, as it always does, came from the forensic medical examination. It proved, beyond any doubt, that Habiba's claim of sexual assault was a complete lie. Bassam was entirely innocent of that accusation. The motive was purely to eliminate the threat of exposure that would have ended their criminal empire.
Justice was eventually delivered, confirming the gravity and premeditation of the crime.
Ashraf Hamad, the architect of the facade and the murderer, was sentenced to execution by hanging. Habiba received life imprisonment, which is 25 years. The remaining defendants, the assistants who helped dig and seal the grave, they received sentences of 5 to 10 years of hard labor.
It is just a stunning, heartbreaking tragedy. 8 years of genuine love destroyed by this calculated multi-generational web of deep-seated criminal deception.
Mhm.
all ending with a murder planned weeks in advance and disguised as a simple home visit.
This case offers, I think, a profound lesson on the danger of relying on outward appearances. The family's claimed respectability, the doctor title, the businesswoman status, the focus on principles,
Yeah.
it masked decades of serious capital crimes.
We often rely on the surface level stability of those around us to define our trust. If you are listening to this and you rely heavily on those outward markers of success, this case is a warning shot.
If a family could successfully maintain a high society facade for 8 years to cover a life of forgery, high stakes drug trafficking, and massive jail sentences, what level of deception could be hiding in plain sight in everyday life? It's a terrifying question to consider when assessing the integrity of the narratives we choose to believe.